Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight in college. My guest today is Mark Beal. He's the author of 101 Lessons They Never Taught You in College, as well as the managing partner for Taylo. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Yeah, no problem. So usually I start my guests where you went to college. So where'd you go to school?
Interesting. When I graduated from high school, I actually went in the Army. So I went in the Army, and I ended up going to the West Point Prep School, which years ago was located at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. It's now located up at West Point at the United States Military Academy. So I went there for a year, which might have been the best thing I ever did. It got me real disciplined, focused, and when I finished up my year, or more than a year there, I had the chance to either go to West Point or I'd been accepted to Rutgers University, and I chose Rutgers University. So I went to Rutgers University. This would have been 1985.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's go back into high school first.
Okay.
So what happened, when did you get started in looking at college? Was it sophomore year, freshman year, was it senior year? When did it all begin for you?
Well, for me, I guess it was a little bit different because my dad, in one of his previous roles, was actually in the admissions office at West Point. So he was a colonel in the Army. I grew up at West Point, so I grew up on the military at the military academy. So from kindergarten through just about high school.
Wow. And
so he was, he was one of those folks you had to go through to get into West Point. So I was always attuned to colleges, college admission. I'd go into his office and he'd have stacks. He'd have every college's catalog on his desk, and so I was just kind of attuned to that from a young age. And so I was always fascinated with visiting colleges, touring campuses. I enjoyed it so much. And then in his role at West Point, he was also very active with the track and cross country team. So we traveled a lot to meets at other campuses. So I was kind of attuned to it at a young age because of his role there, and always kind of had an eye on universities and schools, and got the chance to go with him on various trips to universities across the country.
So now you get to Rutgers University. What's it like? How'd you like it there?
Yeah, I think with every high school student, there's obviously a bunch of variables. One of those is the size of the school. I really enjoyed the idea that it was a big university because you got to meet different people, see different people, try different things every single day. I don't think I ever ran into the same person twice for quite a while. So I actually enjoyed that. And then I also loved the opportunity, which you have at many schools, to, in my case, join the radio station, to call the games on radio. So I would travel with the football and the basketball teams and call those games. And I really enjoyed that. But there was a lot of opportunity. And like I said, I mean, all schools, big or small, probably have as much opportunity, but there was just something about the bigness of it I enjoyed, and the fact that you just met a lot of people. I look back now, some of my classmates who were in my communications or journalism courses then, they're at the Today Show now, they're on Fox News, they host national morning radio shows, and back then we were just students.
Sure.
But that's where they are, 25 plus years later.
Great. So now, you graduate college? How do you go from there to being the managing partner of Taylo?
Well, between my junior and so when I was a freshman, sophomore, I worked in athletics. I worked at the Rutgers Athletic Department in what was then called Sports Media Relations. Now it's probably called Communications. I also freelanced for the Asbury Park Press, so they'd have me go out and cover local sporting events, 5K runs, 10K runs. And then I think starting my either freshman or sophomore year, I worked, as I mentioned, at the radio station at Rutgers. So I was really into media. And then the summer between my junior and senior year, I had an interesting schedule. I would get on a train early in the morning from New Brunswick. I'd get to I worked for a sports public relations agency that was located in the mid-50s in Manhattan. It was called Mike Cohen Communications, and Mike was a former NBC sports public relations lead. And I worked there. And then when I got done around 5:30, 6 o'clock, I ran to 30 Rockefeller Center and helped produce what was one of the first sports radio shows in this country on NBC, WNBC at the time, which is now WFAN. And would do that until midnight, and then I would run as fast as I could to Penn Station and catch a 12:20 or 12:30 train back to New Brunswick and then do it over. So that summer was a big summer for me. And it was that summer that I really started gravitating more towards public relations. I really enjoyed the work at the public relations agency because we were creating news.
Yeah.
and doing a lot of just interesting storytelling. And once I came back from school, I said, that's what I really would love to find a career in public relations, and sports too. But it was really about public relations and the idea of uncovering great stories and then telling those stories.
Great.
So,
and so when did Taylo begin?
Well, Taylo started in 1984. So I graduated Rutgers in 1989. So they'd been around for about 5 years. And two of my current managing partners, Brian Harris and Tony Signori, they were at Mike Cohen Communications. In fact, I was their intern back in '88. And they called me in 1990 after I'd spent a year at Fordham University. That was my first job out of school. Actually, was in their athletic department handling public relations. And they'd called and said, do you want to come over to what was called Allen Taylor Communications at the time? And I jumped at that chance. So that was around March or April of 1990. And at the time, it was just 7 or 8 employees. And we've evolved quite a bit since 1990 to where we have more than 100 across the country in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Charlotte, and Atlanta. And we've evolved as a public relations agency. And so it's, origins of the agency in 1984, but we've evolved so much over the past, I would say, since we took over in July of 2004, so over the past 13 years, to the point where Harvard University actually wrote a case study about the transformation of our agency from a traditional public relations agency to more of a strategic marketing agency.
Wow.
Yeah.
And some of the clients that people recognize, I guess.
Well, there's one right there, which is great. So Allstate has been a client of ours since 2006. But yeah, a lot of the what we call our client partners, the brands that we collaborate with, are, we really focus on what we call category leading brands. So Allstate, Mercedes-Benz, Capital One, Procter & Gamble, companies and brands that most consumers are very familiar with.
Yeah.
And so we're collaborating with those companies and brands on a daily basis, developing campaigns to really engage the target consumer.
Great. So how did 101 lessons they never taught you in college, how did that all begin?
In 2013, Rutgers University called, and they said, we're going to put more emphasis on public relations courses within the School of Communication, and would you like to teach? And I absolutely would love the opportunity to teach. And luckily, like I said, I've got 3 managing partners who said, go, do it, great opportunity. And so I started, and after each class, every week, and by email and by phone, I get these calls and these emails, how do I start to network professionally? How do I develop a resume? How do I secure an internship? How do I get a job after graduation? And so now it's been 5 years, and the questions continue. I'm getting calls now. It's interesting, even last week, from students who I had 5 years ago who are now looking at their second job after college.
Wow.
And so they're calling me with advice on, okay, I've had this first job for a year or two. I'm looking to make a move in my career. So now I'm at that point where it's they've actually already been in the workforce a year or two, and now they're looking to maybe move on. So I'm getting those calls now. So between the sophomores who I teach and those I've taught who are now a year or two out of school, all their questions inspired the book. And as I was answering them, I said, really, these answers can be lessons. And I was getting them over and over that I knew, okay, no one's really teaching this.
Yeah.
And so then I just started, probably 2 years ago, writing. I said, let's come up with 100 lessons. And when I submitted to the editor, he said, you have 101 here. And I said, actually, that's even better. 101 even sounds better. But it was truly inspired by students. Students who I teach, as well as just students who I get calls from, maybe friends of ours, families we know, and they say, do you mind chatting with my son or daughter? She's, they're either graduating or they're looking for an internship. And it just was consistent, the type of questions that were coming from, 18 to 21, 22-year-olds.
So everything that's in the book is really what you're learning in school, but applying it for after college.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You go to school to continue learning and to get a degree and eventually to, secure that job. And so the one thing I think is missing, and I don't mean at every university, but there's not a course specifically about how do I transition from this university or college to a career. Yeah. There are career centers, and you can go in there and get help and advice. But I really think it would be great that I would say sophomore year, I think freshman year, there's too much going on, too much of a transition.
Right.
I know by the time I got into sophomore year, I felt like I was, okay, now I know where I am, I know my way around campus, I understand how the courses work. I think it would be great right around that first or second semester to have a course on, again, transitioning, because at that point, you can emphasize the importance of internships and experience and beginning to build a professional network. Not that that's too late come senior year, but it would be great if you can get a jump start on it sophomore year and definitely junior year. And so I just think a course like that should be mandatory for every student across the country, no matter where they go to school. And again, about planning that transition from the 4 great years I'm having here to now a career.
Right. Now, some of the lessons I was reading in the book, they're really simple lessons. It really just comes down to networking and different types of meeting people that take those opportunities from people that are giving them to you.
Yeah.
Do you want to go over just a few that maybe come to the top of your head?
I agree. It's very simple. And it's what we call, in marketing, we call like snackable content. It's just content that you can, easy to digest, easy to understand, and easy to apply. But I think what's interesting is I've probably taught, I'll say close to 1,000 students over 5 years. There's some who they've got this mindset, and however it came about, they are focused from their freshman, sophomore year on this career and this job. And I've got there was a student who just graduated from an upstate New York school who's starting sophomore year reached out to me. He knew me through a family friend and just consistently stayed in touch, consistently asked for, do you know other people you can introduce me to? Consistently sent me a thank you note after I introduced him. Like that was, but that's rare.
Yeah.
And so to your point, there's, just some folks just need, some of this information, some of this guidance, some of these tips. And I have had students and those who've recently graduated respond and just say, this is just a great guide for me. Like I can pick it up the next time I'm going on an interview and I can just refresh how to approach it, how to prepare, how to plan, all those things. So it's meant to be, I think, a guide no matter where you are in that process, whether you're a freshman or sophomore, whether you just graduated, and just to remind yourself of, again, the process wherever you are and how to approach it.
Now, you were saying at the beginning that a lot of your friends are at the Today Show and Good Morning America and so on and so forth. All those kids were all, they were all college kids at one time, right?
Yeah.
So is that the network that you're building is from the college that you're at? And
I think it's a combination. One of the lessons in the book is that your classmates and friends today are going to be decision makers tomorrow. And I truly believe that. And I don't think most students, in fact, I say it the first day of class every semester, I don't think most students realize that. Again, when you're in college, you're having fun, you're going to school, you've got maybe a part-time job, you've got a lot going on. But you don't realize that the young lady or the young man sitting next to you, maybe a CEO one day, or maybe whoever, whatever they might be. So I do remind them that your networking should actually start here. You probably have more than one class with, especially once you're in your major, you probably have multiple classes with folks right in this classroom where you see them a few times a semester and then, the following semester. I said, so it should start there. You should start collaborating, getting on LinkedIn together, but then take it, to your point, a step further. So who's a Rutgers alum that maybe I as a professor can introduce them to? Or I always say, at a family barbecue, there's someone at that family barbecue that can help you in your career, whatever it might be. You just need to go out. You actually just need to be proactive, shake their hand, introduce yourself, and then take it from there. But there's somebody.
And that's some of the thing that comes up in the book as well is a lot of people don't like public speaking.
Correct.
So what do you tell the students that are in college to help them with that public speaking? Yeah.
Well, there's two things I say. One is that from now through the rest of your life, the rest of your career, it doesn't matter what profession you get into, you are going to be speaking. It could be one-on-one in an interview. It could be to a small group. It could be to very large groups. Not all of us are per se getting into sales, but you are always presenting something or selling an idea or selling a concept to, it could just be to your supervisor. So I tell them to just embrace it, as opposed to, I don't speak well in public, so I'm going to ignore it. Instead, I say embrace it, proactively go out and find a course or someone who's kind of an expert in that, speaking. In fact, I cite, there was a great story Warren Buffett talked about. He had a fear of it. And he literally just went to, there was an ad in the newspaper for public speaking, and he went and took it, and he helped him overcome his fear because he knew for the rest of my career I'm going to be speaking in public in one form or another. So I think it's important. It ties to a lesson here where even when you go for that face-to-face interview, to be able to walk in, look someone in the eye, shake their hands with confidence. I know that sounds basic, but it's you do have to I remind my students all the time. I say, when you walk in, look them in the eye, address them by their name, and they might even think I'm being, I don't know, silly in saying that, but I said, no, it's the biggest difference. It's that first impression.
Yeah.
If you walk in and your eyes are down, you don't address me by name, and you just kind of give me a weak handshake, I've already made an impression.
Sure.
Fair or not, I've made an impression.
Correct.
So
what can a student expect from like a class like yours? What do they get out of that class?
Yeah, I have currently there's 2 courses that I kind of rotate teaching at Rutgers. One is a public relations course, so it's it's communications majors who are interested in public relations, and so in that course it's real world kind of case studies, work we're doing for our clients. It's things that are happening in the marketplace in real time. So if there's a story that breaks that morning, I bring it into class and, hey, did we see what this brand did today or that brand? So it's more about brands and what they're doing to market themselves, to engage consumers. But some of these lessons do come up in there. I mean, probably the biggest one for that class is just writing. I think writing is a lost art.
Sure.
And we spend a lot of time on writing, like writing for business, writing professionally, writing professional emails. And we do spend a lot of time on speaking and speaking publicly. I actually bring in 5 guest speakers to that course from various areas of, I'll call it communications, might be an expert in social media, an expert in marketing, advertising. And they come in and present to the group and talk to the group. So that's one side, but the other course that I think really inspired the book was, it's a course that mostly is seniors, just about all seniors, and it's called Leadership in Organizations, but it's really about understanding how to, when you do get that internship or that job, how to truly understand, even if it's a supervisor who's only a year or 2 older than you, how do they communicate? How do they manage communications? How should I communicate with them? Do they prefer email? Do they prefer face-to-face? It's all those kinds of things, and that's the course that is interesting for me because I have those students right before they graduate. So most of them then are in the mode of, I need to get a job, I need to interview. So we do spend a lot of time on preparing them for interviewing, and interviewing has even changed. It seems like now, compared to when I interviewed years ago, the first interview is a phone interview, so it's a screening.
Right.
And I tell them, and it's logical, but I don't think they realize it, I said, they're judging you on one thing, your voice. They can't see you. So are you confident over the phone? Are you articulate? Are you expressing kind of confidence that they say, wow, I want to meet this person? And then if you make that round, now it seems like they go to like a Skype interview. So now they can see you, but you're on Skype. So we talk about things just like, is the technology working? Because if you're coming in and out on it, they might be, yeah, it wasn't a great interview. And then ultimately, bringing you and inviting you into their company to walk the halls, to meet. And I tell my students all the time, it's equally as important that you're interviewing them, you're checking out their culture. So when you walk in there, look around. Is this the kind of place where you can see yourself for a year or 2 or 3? And that's what you should be doing when they're interviewing you. You're also, in essence, interviewing them.
Yeah. Now, you brought up social media a couple of times. What do you think of social media? Should students be utilizing it to their benefit? What is actually your opinion?
Absolutely. I have a note in here in one of the chapters. I say use it to your advantage. And what I mean by that is, if we think about it, Twitter, Facebook, they're all approximately 11, 12 years old now. So if a student now is 20, they've kind of grown up on this. They're probably more versed and fluent in it than the 50-year-old executive who's interviewing them. And so they should use that to their advantage. The other thing they should do, and I start, sophomores is I don't teach freshmen, but sophomores. The sophomores do have a good sense of, I want to get into fashion, music, finance, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And if they know that that's their passion, I strongly suggest, okay, well, let's start either using your social channels or create a specific social channel. So let's just say it's a Twitter handle that is specific to that industry. So if I really want a career in fashion, well, start tweeting about it, sharing content about it, sharing news about it, to the point by the time where you're a sophomore, junior, senior, you've got not just a following, but you go in for an interview in the fashion industry, and people say, "Wow, this individual has been talking about fashion, sharing content about fashion. They have a POV on fashion for the past couple of years." I think that can really set them apart from other candidates, and I think it's a great way to use something they love, which is social media, but use it to their advantage as far as focused on whatever industry they may want to get into. And so I do highlight that here. Now, it doesn't mean, again, by the time you get to senior year, it's too late. But that's what I would do. When I'm using my social channels, especially something like Twitter, I'm typically, sharing content about brands who are out there marketing themselves in a unique way, in a different way, in a disruptive way. So that's kind of how I'm sharing content. And it's just because that's what I'm in. I'm in marketing, and so I love every morning getting up and reading about brands and sharing that information. And so I think students can do the same thing depending on what category or what industry they want to get into.
So that brings up another point then on students. If they want to get into a field like that, what should they be reading? What are some of the things that they should be looking for?
That's great question. So the first day I have a new intern start with our agency, but specifically kind of with my group within the agency, I give them about 12 trade publications to read, all online. Unlike, again, when I was in school, these are all online now. So from Ad Age to Ad Week to Sports Business Journal, all marketing, business, entertainment, business. And it's the first time they probably have even heard of any of these outlets or seen any of these outlets. And within a month, and not only do we have them each day view them, we actually have them create kind of a daily newsletter that goes out to our whole agency about what brands are out there doing. Within about a month, they're like, "I've taken in so much information, it's great." And I go back to school and I talk about this brand or that brand, and my fellow students are looking at me like, "Where are you getting all this information?" But they love it. And so it's the idea that I think no matter what industry you go into, immerse yourself in the trade outlets that cover it. So if you want to get into automotive, well, there's plenty of automotive. You just need to log on, and there's probably plenty of free ones too. But then each day, read on what brands are doing in the automotive category, how they're innovating, how they're introducing new products and responding to consumer needs. That, to me, is the way to quickly immerse yourself in a category and become versed in it.
And how big is Taylo right now? How many employees do you have there?
So as I mentioned, we've evolved quite a bit. We have more than 100 employees, and we started in New York, but now we have offices in Los Angeles, Chicago, Charlotte, Atlanta. But I think the biggest change is the makeup of our agency, and that's been led by our CEO Tony Signori and our COO Brian Harris and my other partner John Lipris. And we've gone from a traditional PR agency to, as I say, kind of a full-service strategic marketing agency. So of those more than 100 employees, many of them have come from ad agencies or digital agencies. We've got script writers, producers, designers. And so it's really about the idea of creating what I call channel agnostic content. So you're creating content or creating a platform or a campaign that could live, it can live in the paid space, it could live in the social space, the digital space, the earned space. And so that's been the biggest difference, I'd say, over the past 10 years for PR agencies, is to evolve to where they're, again, developing this campaigns that could really live in any channel to where that consumer's consuming their content.
Now, where can people find the book?
Well, the book is exclusively available on Amazon, which is great. A lot of people have found it. I had in fact, one of my partners, John Lipris, through a connection through his foundation and a connection back to his high school in upstate New York, they purchased 400 copies, and they gave one to every student on the last day of school, I guess 2 weeks ago. And I was like, wow, that's so. Every freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior at this high school in Hoosick Falls, New York, and his foundation, the JLS Foundation, they gave away one book to every student, which I thought was great. So I've had just people who I don't know have sent me an email or you said, I've purchased your book. It was great timing for graduation season. I've had a lot of folks who said, I've given it away to everyone I knew who was graduating this spring or this summer. And it's been a great gift to give them. So yeah, Amazon has been great. It's a great place. Most folks, once you say Amazon, they know how to find it. So it's worked out well.
Good. Well, we're coming to the end of our show. So usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there that their sons and daughters are graduating, and what lessons can they learn?
Now, is this parents of high school students?
Yeah, high school and college.
Okay. Well, I'd say it may be more advice for the student themselves. I would say for high school students graduating, about to go into college, there are no limitations. Anything is possible. And I don't, when I graduated high school, and like I said, I spent about a year in the Army, I don't credit it. Maybe it helped, but when I got to college, to me there were no rules. Meaning, try everything, challenge everything. Jumping on the radio station there. I don't know if a year earlier I would have even tried that, but so I think it's the idea that you've got freedom now, and the freedom to go try things, pursue things. Don't be afraid to go, like I said, network, meet people, try it all. That's my thing, is really go out there and try it all. You've got this opportunity between now high school and when you're going to eventually start a career, these 4 years to really, I talk about in the book, become culturally relevant. If sports is your thing, that's great. Well, then go visit the theater, try some other things. Sure. And then, as we talked about earlier, I say network, and we maybe don't have to make it that formal, but the students you're sitting next to in class, you're growing up in this together. You're going to be in this career together. You're going to graduate together. Start now. Don't wait till graduation day. Start now. Start collaborating. Start working together. Start sharing ideas. So that's what I would say to, again, more probably the students than the parents. But for the parents, it's don't limit the students. To me, anything is possible. Anything is possible. I saw my son go get his MBA from UC San Diego, and he started his own business while he was getting his MBA, and that became his first job, so to speak, out of school. So nothing is impossible. And then I think for students graduating college, I always say pursue your passion. And I tell my students this all the time, is if you love something, if you love a brand or you love a category or an industry, well, there's a job there for you. And so pursue it, because wouldn't it be great to be able to work in music or fashion or whatever it might be, or at a brand that you really love? You can do it. There's no limitations. Just focus on it and set your sights on it.
Great. Well, thank you very much
for
coming.
Thank
you.
Appreciate
it. Yep. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.